Discovery ISS, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Ready, Al.
NASA Educational Technology Services, this is Houston. Please call Discovery ISS for a voice check.
Discovery ISS, this is NASA Educational Technology Services. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Good morning from inside the Payload Operations Center at the Marshall Space Flight Center. I'm Heather Smith, writer of the NASA Education Taking Up Space blog. We are excited to ask you questions chosen by our blog readers today. The first question is for Commander Scott Kelly. What are some ways that the work you do in space can encourage both our youth and scientists working on the ground?
Well, I think one of the ways we can encourage kids and scientists is that we have a incredibly challenging work environment and a challenging problem building a space station and then utilizing it. And the way we do that is through teamwork. And teamwork is critical, I think, not only here, but getting things accomplished on the ground. So hopefully in kids and scientists and other professionals looking at the teamwork that NASA uses to get things done, they can take inspiration from that and use that themselves for whatever they're involved with on the ground.
Great. The next question is for Cady Coleman. What kinds of experiments are currently being conducted on the station, and how will the research benefit people on Earth?
We're doing some really exciting experiments in crystal growth, in fluid physics, in combustion. And sometimes those things sound like, well, why would I want to know about that? Well, combustion, it's all about pollution. Up here where everything is weightless, those hot gases don't rise. And we can understand how we can actually look at how things burn and how pollution products are generated. So we can do combustion research. We get to see, for fluid physics, we get to see what liquids really want to do. Down on Earth, gravity actually dictates. It's such a big force compared to all the other ones. Gravity dictates. And so we can understand what liquids really want to do. And so many processes on Earth are liquids going through pipes. Everything that you want to play with or that is made and manufactured is liquid flowing through a pipe and making a product. So we learn a lot about how to make things on Earth by experimenting up here in space.
Okay. For Commander Lindsay, how has the station changed since you were first there?
Well, the station is probably on the inside and the outside about 3 times bigger than the last time I was here. When I was here last time, we had the U.S. lab and the airlock and the Russian segment. But since then, the Russians have added, I guess, 3 modules. We've added the module we're in here now, the Japanese module, the Columbus module, of course the multipurpose module that we just added. We have a couple of transfer vehicles here that we didn't have before. We've added an 2 additional nodes on the cupola, and it's a magnificent place now. When I first opened the hatches and floated in a few days ago after docking, I was just shocked at the size of the station. Additionally, we've added 3 more solar arrays since I was here, and so even coming up to rendezvous, looking out and seeing the station, it looked like almost a totally different place. So it has changed dramatically, and it's really exciting for all of us to see the space station completely assembled.
Great, thank you. This is Joe Charbonnet. I'm an intern from Georgia Tech, and my question is for Colonel Bowe, a fellow Ramblin' Wreck. What role do you think that robots will play in the future of space exploration? Go Jackets, and what's the good word?
Go Jackets. I think robots will take a more and more, much bigger role as time goes on. Just like computers, if I asked someone back in the 60s and 70s, what would the role be of computers in the average person's life? Most people probably said not a whole lot. But now we have computers in everything. So I think robots is the same way, and that's robots will we'll have a good synergy between the human and the robot, and they'll be able to do things that we consider mundane or dangerous, like going into smoke-filled compartments. And that's the purpose of Robonaut R2 that we have up here, is to start looking at those tasks and trying to refine them and optimize them. So I see a bigger role as time continues for Robonaut and robotics.
Okay, back to Heather. This question is for Aldrew. How well does reduced gravity flight prepare you for what it's like to be in space?
Well, the short answer is it's very useful. In preparing for space, we have a number of different things we can use. We have the neutral buoyancy laboratory of the pool that helps us, but it doesn't necessarily give us that free-flowing feel because the water's viscous and it resists our motion. We also have virtual reality laboratories which give us a good visual sense of what it's like to be in space, but it doesn't give us that same dynamics, the kinematics of running around in space. The reduced gravity flights give you all that. You are weightless, just like you'd be in orbit, for brief periods of time, so you can get a sense of how things can move around freely without those other restrictions on them.
This question is for Steve Bowen. How has greater internet connectivity and social media affected the spaceflight experience?
There you go.
Sorry about the delay. Well, that's actually an interesting question because I actually spent 14 years in submarine force where we had zero internet connection. And so the similarities between spaceflight and submarines is very real. And this communication up here with the internet, with the ability to tweet, it's all about communication. And communication can lead to some deception as well. Just like the internet is full of information, but it's not necessarily knowledge. It's data, it's information, but it's not real knowledge. It's not real action. Tweeting provides little bits and glimmers of data and little hints at information, but unless you're actually there and you have the ability to perform some action, it can give you a slight sense of it. But you really need to be there in any of these communication forms, regardless whether it's social media or whatever term you want to use now for modern communication. So it can lead to the misapprehension that you have control over something when you don't. So you don't want to be running your life on the internet from here. You actually need to be someplace to do something. So while it helps bring people in, hopefully it draws you in so you actually want to be there. And that in and of itself, it's not sufficient to replace space flight or any other activity that you're doing.
Okay. This question's for Mike Barrett. What do you think is the greatest legacy of the Space Shuttle program?
Well, that's a great question with a really big answer. The Space Shuttle has become such an icon of human spaceflight, and I think that's well-deserved. If you look at it, you have the biggest thing is really a broad-based knowledge base of how to work in space. As a space medicine guy, I look at the hundreds of human spaceflight experiences we have off the shuttle, and that's what you need to really solidify your knowledge of how the human reacts to the short-term spaceflight the shuttle has given us. And beyond that, we've got propulsion, robotics, hypersonic flight, physics of low Earth orbit. I mean, the Space Shuttle has just given us a tremendous knowledge base of how to do business in space. So I think that's really the big thing.
Okay, for Nicole Stott, what would life in space be like without the use of robotics?
Well, I think very simply it would be a lot more difficult. If we just look at the space station as an example, whether it's assembly or the EVA tasks that we have or some of the what might be thought of today because of robotics, simple maintenance tasks that we have on the outside of the vehicle, it would be a lot more difficult if we didn't have the robotic arms that we use to manipulate both our EVA crew members and the hardware that we have outside. And I think that's just one simple example of how robotics has helped us in spaceflight.
For Commander Kelly, since many high school and college students are involved in programming Sphere's robots, can you tell us more about the experiment?
Well, Spheres is a experiment that's operated and conducted by MIT with partnership with NASA here on board the space station. It's really interesting for us because it's very interactive with the crew members. It's basically 3 satellites that look at and investigate different control system laws for operating satellites in space. And as our technology improves, there's need to understand how satellites can operate together. Mostly we have satellites that operate independently, but Spheres is designed to see how they can work together, fly in formation, do tasks as part of a larger group of satellites versus individually. And it's a lot of fun for us. Recently I did a contest with high school kids from around the country where they programmed the satellites themselves to do certain tasks, and it was a competition, and I think the kids really enjoyed it, as did we on board.
For Cady, what were you most looking forward to experiencing again on your return to space?
Well, my family might not want to hear this, but I'm actually really happy up here, living in space, and everything that we need is up here. We spent a long time learning all the things that we needed to know in order to operate safely up here. So I spent a long time in school learning things, practicing things, and school is the astronaut job as well. We're always learning things, and so I feel very well prepared. I feel very, very comfortable. And when you think about it, you don't need that much. We have a lot of nice food. I guess I would vote for having a little more variety in our food when I get home. I'll look forward to eating things that we don't have here. I probably look forward to having a shower because I take a sponge bath here. But in general, I think that it's really amazing that we've designed a place that we can live in space, and I am really happy here.
For Commander Lindsay, what do you do for fun in microgravity, and do you have any special tricks you like to do?
Yeah, we call those stupid astronaut tricks, and I have several that I'm not very good at, but and I have the bruises to show for it. But you can just see one of our crew members just floated away. You see Scott's doing a little flip for you, so we can do that all day long. What's really interesting is I'll give you a little physics lesson here. Is that when you throw a ball on the Earth and play catch or something like that, you have to actually loft that ball because gravity will cause that ball to drop. And we do it subconsciously just because we're used to living in 1G. When you come up here in space, the first time you try to throw a ball or any item to another crew member, you invariably will throw it over that person's head because you are used to lofting all the time. So one of the biggest challenges in just moving around and floating through the modules is to not loft yourself so that you don't slam into the top of wherever you're traveling. But you never get tired of playing in microgravity and learning how to move around and do things.
For Eric Bowe, what emotions are you feeling during your final ride on the space shuttle?
Well, I remember when I was in high school, I went to the new Air and Space Museum in Washington and seeing a large-scale model of the space shuttle being displayed. And I marveled at it. And I'm up here on Discovery on its final flight and still marveling. It's an amazing machine, amazing ship, and just trying to savor every moment up here that we have to enjoy. But obviously when we come back and land back at Earth, we're focused on the mission right now. I think that's when the bittersweet moment when we land will happen and we actually look out and survey. The shuttle has had an amazing legacy in Discovery, all the people that have worked on her. And to me, that's what makes the ship, that's what makes Discovery, is all the people that are involved with making her fly.
Hi, this is Joel Stein. I'm an intern from Virginia Tech, and I was wondering for Drew, astronauts train long and hard to be prepared in space, but once you get there, is there anything that you have found that you were not prepared for?
There's always plenty of things that are any place you go that you're never prepared for. I think for me the biggest thing is stuckness is probably the one word that comes to mind. Like being outside my last two spacewalks, there were things out there that are supposed to move that didn't want to move all the time. I would love to have had a can of WD-40 out there with me to loosen up a lot of those things. The other part is things around here inside have the opposite problem. Nothing stays put. So you look for your glasses, you look for your checklists. They're always sitting right behind your head inevitably. But so they don't stay stuck when they want them to stay stuck. And there's Velcro that sticks to everything you don't want it to stick to, as well as the things you do want it to stick to. And the final element of stuckness I run into is just traffic around here. We've got a bunch of narrow corridors that connect us through all these different modules as well as the shuttle. And we're always working in the exact same place at the exact same time. We're either trying to get meals or trying to fix the same thing. And there's 12 of us up here, and there's always just traffic jams that go on here. And so you wind up in a queue waiting to get where you're going. And what it means is things just take longer than you planned on. And so you just have to have a little patience, and you understand why they give you maybe an hour for what you thought was a 20-minute task.
For Steve Bowen, what do you think is some of the most valuable science or information to come out of space exploration so far?
Let's see. Actually, I'll answer this in two parts. The first part is I have absolutely no idea, because a lot of what, especially here on the International Space Station, a lot of what you do is basic research, which is fundamental properties of how things interrelate, how they operate, how the world actually works. And it's impossible, at least for me, to look at some of this stuff and say what that will lead to, what knowledge that will lead to in the future. So I think the contributions are incredible. I can't point to one right now, but our understanding of the universe is expanding continuously while we're doing research up here. The second part, though, being old like I am, and remembering when we landed on the moon, my whole generation, everybody that's about my age, which there are some people here who are about my age, of engineers and scientists that were inspired by the early space program, that's really our greatest contribution to science and knowledge on Earth, is the whole generation of kids who are now adults that became engineers and scientists because of the research and exploration we did through Apollo and Gemini and Mercury. That was really exciting stuff, and even though we all can't grow up to be astronauts, I was perfectly happy being an engineer, and that would have been a great, great place to spend my life.
For Mike Barrett, what is a failure that occurred during one of your space flights, and how did the crew handle it?
Well, that's a really good question. I've got a little over 200 days in space, and let me tell you that failures happen. And the one thing I learned is that the best way to react to a failure is to be ready for it in the first place. And everything we do up here involves a lot of planning and having backup systems and methods to handle things. When I first arrived at the space station on the Soyuz, our automatic docking system failed, and we were trained and equipped to bring it in manually, and we did that. And more recently here, when I had Steve Bowen out on the end of the robotic arm, and he had a big, heavy piece of very expensive hardware, and our robotic workstation crashed. And, that's not a good place to be, but we had a backup system. And the space station crew, in a very calm, very cool-headed, but very quick response, brought up that secondary workstation. And within a few minutes, we were back in business and good to go, and Steve was moving again. So seemed a long time to Steve. But obviously being prepared is the biggest thing, and it's great to see that when everything is in order and the crew reacts to their training and cool heads, and you're back in business really fast.
For Nicole Stott, if you could pick any flight in the history of the space program to have flown on, what would it be and why?
Well, I think I have to answer two flights. The flight I had before to the space station and the flight that I have now, for different reasons. The space station flight was something I was really looking forward to. We were at a point in the program where we had just moved to a 6-person crew, so I was really interested to see how that would work. I had a fantastic crew up here, and I think we did a lot of really good things with robotics, with the HTV, the first HTV capture that we had, and we had over 150 or so science investigations going on at any one time, so it felt like a really productive time. And this flight on Discovery, I think I was really, really honored to be asked to be a part of this crew, given that at the point it was going to be the last space shuttle flight and the last, as we know, space shuttle flight of Discovery. And there's a lot of emotion and sentiment, I think, associated with that, and just pride in the legacy of this program, and that that we have the honor of being a part of that.
For Commander Kelly, What do you think is the coolest thing about Robonaut 2?
That he listens to what I say and he does all of his homework. Unlike two other people I know. Actually, it's a great technology demonstrator. It actually has pretty limited functionality right now, but in the future, like someone here was saying, like I think Steve or Eric was saying, like computers, robots are going to become an integral part of our lives, and it's a great way to start with Robonaut here on the space station. And we're gonna put him to work in the limited capacity he can work in, and hopefully that'll lead to more sophisticated and useful robots in the future.
For Cady Coleman, when you are viewing the Earth from space, what do you most like to look for?
Well, for me, looking straight down, geography just becomes alive. I was never a kid that sort of knew every country and where it was, and now when I look down at the Earth and you get to see all the different features, the mountains, the rivers, and you can see where people are living, you can see where people aren't living, and think about why. It makes me think of how incredible it was when we still are exploring, but even when going across the United States when there was just nothing down there, and the pioneers crossing the country, how difficult that must have been. I can see all that through geography because I see the mountain ranges and you see the weather. And so to me, it's like looking at the history that already was and thinking about the places that we still have yet to enjoy and explore. And I love looking down at the Earth just because it's our place. It's our special place. There's no lines between the countries. There's no capital letters saying what countries are where. It's just all of our planet, all the countries, all the people. And I feel very special being one to have this viewpoint.
For Commander Lindsay, with so much equipment on station, how do you find something you're looking for?
Wow, that's I tell you what, that's a big challenge. And but we actually have a system up here on the space station, an inventory management system, that every time something's moved or put away or moved to a new location, it's actually logged into the computer. And all of the bags and all the equipment have little barcodes on them, like when you go to the grocery store and check out now, you swipe the items. The cashier swipes the items through this barcode reader, and it logs the price. Well, what we have up here is these barcodes will track all of these items. So when you go to do a new procedure or get equipment out, the procedure will tell you where it's located, and it's tracked all based on that barcode. Now, on the space shuttle, we don't have quite so elegant a system. We have things stowed, and we have stowage locations and things like that. But as things get moved around, it becomes a little more challenging for us to find things on shuttle. But fortunately, the shuttle is a much smaller space than the space station, and it can only go so far.
Our last question is for Eric Bowe. Are there any basic tasks that are much harder or easier to do in space?
Yes to both. There are much harder things and much easier things. Let me give you an example. For harder, yesterday I was in the module that we brought up on Discovery, the permanent multi-purpose module, and I had to take off 22 bolts that were in there, and they also had the fasteners were free. So as soon as the washer that was on it could come free and be released. So basically 44 parts. On Earth, you could just take a drill, do all those, let the screws sit there, but in space, they would actually float away, and those pieces would get lost, might get stuck somewhere. So that task makes it much harder because every one of them, you have to make sure that you pull it off by hand and stick it into a bag so that it doesn't get lost. On the much easier side, moving a rack, a lot of our racks on the space station are about the size of a refrigerator, weigh anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds. You can pick that out and move it with one person and move it around from place to place. Like moving a piano on the ground is usually considered a very difficult task in space. If you had a piano up here, it'd be significantly easier moving it from point A to point B.
Thank you all so much for joining us today and answering our questions.
Well, you're welcome, and thanks for joining us. We enjoyed your questions.
Discovery ISS, this is Houston at ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Discovery, ISS, and NASA Educational Technology Services. We are now resuming normal audio communications.
This is Mission Control Houston, the Expedition 26 crew and Discovery's crew. They're finishing up an education event, answering some questions about life on board the International Space Station.